Howdy friends, welcome to the Deep Space Travel Break, a podcast about sci-fi games, but especially No Man's Sky, for now. With 4.0 arriving next week, and with Sean Murray managing expectations on Twitter, I couldn't not talk about it. I'm Kanaju, and this is the Deep Space Travel Break episode 16, brought to you by my latest Cults of No Man's Sky video. That spooky season is nearly upon us, so if you're in the mood for some darker No Man's Sky content, I've got you covered. And who knows, I might have another spooky video in store, depending on what 4.0 gives us. But for now, it's time for housekeeping. So, No Man's Sky releases on Nintendo Switch next Friday, October 7th, 2022. A physical release for PlayStation 5 consoles will also be available for the first time. The 4.0 update will also release simultaneously for all existing players on October 7th, so the wait is almost over. In other news, the Game Awards recently announced that nominations are now open for the 2022 Future class. I'll speak more about this at the end of the podcast if you're interested, but I'm throwing my name in the hat again this year. But alright, I know why you're actually here. Let's talk No Man's Sky 4.0. Since the last episode, we've gotten a couple of key pieces of information about 4.0 from a pretty reliable source. Of course, I'm talking about the big man himself, Sean Murray. Remember, always be skeptical of leaks from anonymous sources. They have nothing to lose by lying to you. Anyways, Sean wrote the following on Twitter. No Man's Sky Switch is releasing on October 7th. That's really soon. Mind blown emoji. Switch is our next big release and marks the moment No Man's Sky ticks over to version 4.0. Switch is a real labor of love for us, and the whole team is fully focused on delivering that technical mini miracle. So, here we finally have confirmation that 4.0 will be releasing alongside the Switch version on October 7th. That sort of breaks the tradition of a big summer update, but considering we were given this date near the beginning of the year, it wasn't too unexpected. It's great to get such advance notice actually on an update's release. However, the timing of the announcement is interesting. If the plan was always to release 4.0 alongside the Switch version, I feel like they could have announced it sooner, since people have been pestering Sean on Twitter all month. It makes me wonder if they were originally planning to release it sooner and it just got pushed back to October 7th, due to the difficulties associated with achieving the aforementioned technical mini miracle. Or perhaps they weren't sure they'd be able to release 4.0 in step with the Switch version until this last week. Hello Games are famously careful about announcing anything before it's ready, so it's not surprising to receive such short notice. Again, if anything, it's a surprise to receive it as early as we have. Besides the release date though, Sean took to Twitter the next day to temper expectations about the scope of 4.0. His tweet reads as follows. 2022 has already been one of our most busy years to date, with Outlaws, Steam Deck, Sentinels, Switch, macOS, Leviathan, Expeditions, and more. The focus of 4.0 is our Switch release, an opportunity to introduce a new group of players into our welcoming community. More will follow. This is pretty big news. So 4.0 will primarily focus on the release of the game on Switch. This is essentially telling the community not to expect a huge content drop on the level of Origins, for example, which was version 3.0 and pretty much added new biomes, new planets, giant sandworms, all kinds of crazies. It gave us a whole new universe to explore. So basically he's saying, 4.0 is going to focus on the Switch, guys. Chill. So instead, we'll likely be getting some quality of life and optimization improvements. Many people expected 4.0 to be a real game changer, and admittedly it still could be, but it's looking more like it'll be on the scale of something like Synthesis or Next Generation. Reaction to this has been split from what I've seen. A lot of players are grateful for everything we've gotten already this year, and they're excited for the new players on Switch, while others are disappointed that 4.0 isn't going to reset the universe or give us new procedural generation or content, etc. Personally, I'm not bothered by the announcement. Sean's clearly trying to manage expectations, but that doesn't mean the update will be a dud. In my experience, quality of life updates like Synthesis are some of the best because they improve the moment-to-moment gameplay. and while Sean's tweet implies limited improvements in content, I still think we're bound to be surprised come October 7th. Now, some of you may have noticed that I've pretty much refrained from speculating on 4.0 for the last couple of months, as I didn't want to inspire any false hype, But now that we have a little more to go on, I'd like to share my thoughts. I think 4.0 could go a couple of ways. Optimistically, it could be similar in scope to the Synthesis update, but with an expedition thrown in for good measure. This would be awesome, because I love the Synthesis update. It's not often mentioned as anyone's favorite update, but it improved several features and greatly improved the stability of the game. I would be over the moon if 4.0 was as great as Synthesis. I know some lower spec hardware has been struggling to run No Man's Sky lately, so bringing in the optimizations made for the Switch version would be welcomed by many. We also know that the UI will likely be updated for the Switch version. Data mining's shown that new menus might give us access to lore we've previously collected, which would be a godsend for people like me. We also still have the Sentinel Freighter Trail, which has gone unused, so hopefully we'll see that unlock soon. Worst case scenario, though, is that it's similar in scope to the Next Generation update. No, I love Next Generation. It released alongside the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, and it brought a ton of graphical and gameplay improvements to those systems and PC. However, players on old consoles really didn't get too much from the bargain, so if 4.0 pulls a similar stunt, then I could see a lot of players being disappointed. Personally, I wouldn't mind as I still have plenty to do in the game, but I can understand others' frustrations. That being said, I feel like it'll be more like Synthesis than Next Generation, but that's just a guess on my part. Now, there is a third option. It's a crazy option, a possibility that I shouldn't even mention, but I will because I can. You may remember that No Man's Sky Beyond was 2019's big summer update. It focused on three main pillars: No Man's Sky VR, multiplayer, and something Hello Games called No Man's Sky 2.0. It was the only summer update to sort of forego a big universe overhaul in favor of hundreds of smaller changes. VR was huge, of course, but it only benefited a few players who actually had the headsets. Multiplayer added the Nexus and the new space anomaly, but a central hub didn't really change the majority of the game. The third pillar, though, was composed of dozens and dozens of quality of life improvements. Granted, they broke the game and made it unplayable for me until Synthesis a few months later, but when the game wasn't crashing, these small improvements made huge differences. NPCs could walk around on planets, there were new NPC interactions, new words to learn, you could ride creatures, you could cook creatures, the UI was improved, graphics were improved, and tons more. Also, the opening tutorial was overhauled to make it less grindy. So in essence, version 2.0 was a quality of life update. Sure, plenty of people who hyped themselves up all year were disappointed, but the majority of players enjoyed the new additions and improvements. Considering a core pillar of that update was porting the game to VR, and 4.0's main pillar is porting the game to Switch, we could see a similar approach this year. So, here's how it might go. Again, take this with a grain of salt. But imagine this. 4.0 brings the game to Nintendo Switch. Touchscreen controls and UI updates are also made available on Steam Deck and VR. New menus make the game's wealth of content more accessible. Optimizations made for the Switch carry over to other systems, helping to stabilize the game. I could even see the tutorial mission being improved further or modified for the Switch. Again, they're introducing a whole new player base to the game, so it would make sense that they would overhaul the beginning of it. Further player-requested improvements and small features could also be thrown in. And since we've gotten a Halloween update for the last couple of years, and this update is launching in October, I think a new expedition will likely follow the next week. This expedition may or may not be Halloween themed, kind of like last year's Emergence expedition, but I have a feeling it'll be something special, based on the gap we've seen since the last one. Not to mention, 4.0 might add new features and frameworks that play into this expedition. And that's 4.0, or at least one possibility. It could be bigger, could be smaller. For all we know, Sean's playing us, and they're actually going to regenerate the entire universe next Friday. Or maybe it really is just a few bug fixes. Only time will tell. In the meantime, I want to know what you think. Are you disappointed at the thought of 4.0 being mostly bug fixes? Do you think it'll be bigger than expected? Or do you think 4.1 will follow shortly after with the big content update people are looking for? What changes are you hoping will be included? Personally, I'm hoping they fix patches of grass not rendering, but I would also love to see improvements to weather effects and water rendering. Those are things that I could see them adding in like an update like this that wouldn't necessarily, be a big overhaul to the universe, but would vastly improve the experience for everyone playing. That being said, I'm not picky. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Update 4.0. I can't wait to see yours, and I'm looking forward to being pleasantly surprised. But I suppose we'll see. Quickly, I'd like to do a community spotlight. Procedural Traveler on Twitter recently announced that he's started a weekly newsletter he's calling the No Man's Sky Weekly Roundup. I'll leave a link to his Twitter in the description below. The newsletter highlights community efforts as well as the latest news. Procedural Traveler has been a pillar of the community for years, so it's great to see he's found a new medium through which to share his passion. Not to mention, the bite-sized pieces of No Man's Sky content the newsletter offers are great for catching up on things that I've missed. Give it a look if you're interested. I'd give it a recommendation. I mean, obviously, I'm recommending it, but you know what I mean. Last but not least, I'm circling back to that future class thing I mentioned at the top of the video. So basically, every year the Game Awards recognizes 50 individuals from around the world that represent the bright and inclusive future of the games industry, and games in general. These people can be game developers, educators, streamers, journalists, or anything really. And yes, that includes YouTubers. Earning this recognition doesn't come with a prize or anything, but it can help elevate my voice in the industry and possibly create opportunities that would otherwise be near impossible for me to reach. In order to be selected, you have to be nominated by members of the community. And so, I would like to humbly ask for your support in nominating me. Game design has been a passion of mine for as long as I can remember. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but I'm not exaggerating. I started drawing mazes and emulating Mario graphics and things like that from like the age of 4. But that's not important. What I'm trying to communicate is that being a part of the future class would mean the world to me. And just like with this channel, I can't succeed on my own. I need your support. So I've put a link in the description below that'll take you to my website, christophercc.com/futureclass. There you'll find a little more information on why, I personally believe I could be a good fit for it, as well as straightforward instructions on how to nominate me if you agree. And if you're interested, it should only take a few minutes of your time. But I would really appreciate it. And if not, no worries. I appreciate you watching this video all the same. Thanks again for supporting the channel. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed my speculation on 4.0. And I'll be reading the comments to see your thoughts as well. Oh yeah, and we're almost to 10,000 subscribers. I need to figure out how we're going to celebrate. Let me know if you have any ideas. Until then though, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!